Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever it is that you're watching from today. My name is James Kinuthia. I'm a safety consultant, and what I do is I give you tips on how to keep your workplace safe. Today, I want us to tackle something that is called emergencies. I know emergency is a very common term, but we never think about it from the local perspective. Let me bring it closer home. What are some of the common emergencies you'd expect from your workplace, for example? The most common. Let's start with the most common. We have fire, right? We have a medical emergency. We have electrical issues. And then you have others that probably would be beyond us in a way. You have security threats. You have floods like we recently saw. And things like, building collapses. All these are emergencies. And there are those that we can prepare for, and there are those that are beyond us. But even for those that we can do something about, what have we done about it? From my experience as an auditor, it's something I always ask for. And most of the time I have to send a template to the client to develop. And this is something we call an emergency response plan. Every time I've asked most clients, do you have an emergency response plan? They've told me, we have done a fire drill and we have serviced the extinguishers, but I don't think we have a document. So let me demystify this document, because I think probably people think it's a very complicated document. So an emergency response plan is basically, we first of all identify the emergencies that you can expect in our workplace. Are you using electricity in your office? There's likelihood of an electrical fault. Tick. There's likely to be a fire. Check. Someone could collapse in the workplace, either out of a medical condition, or maybe they slide and fall over the stairs, topple and probably break a limb. Okay, that's a medical emergency. Then we'll talk about the others that are beyond us, things like building collapse and security. We'll see what we can do about them. But let's start with the first three: fire, medical emergency, and staircase. For example, someone has fallen. Then we ask ourselves, so in case someone falls in the workplace, what can we do to bring them to a hospital? Which hospital? Which is the nearest hospital? And this is the other fallacy people have, that, we have a medical cover, our staff can access any hospital of their choice. When I collapse and I have a heart attack, for example, I am unconscious. Can I wake up and say, please take me to Aga Khan or take me to Nairobi Hospital because that's where my cover says? Let's separate these two things. What you can access from you having a medical cover, from what we are saying is a medical facility that would attend to an emergency within your workplace or near your workplace. That is what we call a referral hospital, actually, within the vicinity of your workplace. So what are we saying? Documenting this is basically saying that if we ever have a medical emergency in our workplace, if we are on the 4th floor of a building and you have Equity Afia, or you have Mata, or you have Avenue on the ground floor, that becomes your first point of referral, for example, for stabilization, for emergency first aid, before you can be transferred to your preferred big hospital, which you're saying your medical covers. Now, this is what I'm trying to say. And this is a place where most employers, I think, you mix up. An emergency referral facility has nothing to do with where your cover is accepted. It is basically to say, what is that facility we can access even before we look at the list of hospitals you are allowed to go to during a medical emergency, and just listing that and documenting and saying, in case of a medical emergency, all our staff at SafePro Limited shall first be taken to, let's say, Bonsai Medical Clinic, which is near us, for stabilization and emergency first aid before being transferred to our secondary referral hospital, which now could be any hospital within our cover or the preferred hospital by many staff. Documenting that, basically, that is an emergency response plan. Let's come to fires. Most of you have extinguishers, you service them, but how many people know how to use them in that workplace? Maybe security, who are on the ground floor. Some of you have staff who came trained and they tell you, yes, I have a fire certificate, but it dates 2022. It dates 2021. It dates 19, I don't know what, surely. It is a requirement by the law that within your workplace, it doesn't matter whether this person was trained last week, when they came to your workplace, you're looking at a different set of hazards. It's a different layout. It's a different workplace. What the law wants you to do is take a team, put it together, train them on firefighting, train them on fire prevention. Because in fire safety, we say there are 3 levels. First thing is to prevent, that we never get a fire. If indeed we have a fire in the workplace, is to catch it early. Maybe through smoke detection, heat detection, basically detection systems. And these are things you install. And thirdly, is to be able to fight this fire. And who does this? It is your emergency response team. Okay? So you have to build capacity of your firefighters, fire marshals, and sometimes even a day's training. Tell them what an extinguisher is, the basic chemistry of fire, how to extinguish fires, how to differentiate these fire extinguishers, because they are different and they are used for different classes of fire, and even what to do and what not to do in case a fire begins. Now, let's talk about first aiders. First aiders, on the other hand, these are people who respond to emergencies within the workplace. And we're talking about first aid. They are not offering any treatment. They are basically trying their level best to contain the situation so that it does not worsen, even as you transfer them to that referral hospital. So in your emergency response plan, you'll of course capture that we'll first offer first aid using our trained first aiders. And then from there, we'll take to a primary referral. And from there, we shall take to the secondary referral. You already have a whole chapter on medical evacuation in your emergency response plan. For the first aiders, what is important? You must get people who are not scared of any sight of blood. People who are not scared of a sight of someone who is conversing and they have all this foaming saliva that is coming out of their mouth. You must get someone who is not scared of body fluids. And you must get someone who is actually brave enough to take action. I have seen in many cases, someone collapses, someone gets injured, and people are actually watching because they have no idea what to do. Someone is probably even a first aider, but they have no idea where to start. So it's very important, even the people you select for your first aiders. Now, how do we wrap all these together? Now you have your trained fire marshals. You have your trained first aiders. You now form what you call an emergency response team, because they have to work in coordination. Because during a fire, who fights the fire? Who calls the fire brigade? Who coordinates evacuation? Who is going to take care of anyone who is injured? So this team must come and have a joint meeting and discuss, what do we do in an emergency? Who is going to be responsible for what? Okay? So you train your firefighters, you train your first aiders, you form what you call an emergency response team. Once you have an emergency response team, now you're ready to do a drill. And I see most people, just before the drill is when you want to train firefighters, is when you want to train first aiders, and then the next week you have a fire drill. During that fire drill, even the marshals have no idea where to stand. They have no idea where the roll call is. They have no idea how to line up or even to coordinate the evacuation. Why? Because it is not important to just have a first aid team. It is not important just to have a fire marshal's team. It is important to have an emergency response team that is well coordinated and talking to each other. The same way the government does multi-agency responses. So you have your GSU on one side, you have the Kenya Police, you have the Kenya Army, and they form a multi-agency response team and they deal with an issue. It is the same thing even at the workplace, that you must have your first aiders and your firefighters talking about how to address an emergency, to avoid even collision and overlaps and confusion. And today, take any company, most companies that I've actually visited, tell them to do a drilling and just observe it. Don't even tell them what to do, and watch the chaos that normally unfolds during such events. Proper planning before the drill.